Hello board game brothers and sisters, I'm Adam Singer and welcome to another episode where I'll be letting you know of all the board games launching this week. As usual, I do like to start these videos with a bit of news and announcements I just found out about over the past week, except I don't really have too much for you this week, except for I did just want to mention one thing, and that's that I will be attending the Clarion Con this weekend, which is here in Ontario, and if you're not familiar with it, it's going to be taking place just north of Toronto, so if you are in the area, I'd love to see you there. And of course, there's going to be a ton of games in their library, and there's going to be some games that you can play to win, and there will also be opportunities to buy and sell used games, so if you're looking for a nice deal on maybe a game you've been looking for, this might be an opportunity to find it, or if you're looking to get rid of some games in your collection, this could be a good opportunity for that as well. But I'd love to see you there if you are able to make it, and the tickets are only $45. Unfortunately, I will only be available to attend for Saturday, but if you are going to be there, feel free to say hello and I'd be happy to play some games. Other than that, I do like to give a quick shout out to Alex over at Boardgame Co. because him and I do work together keeping track of all these upcoming campaigns, and I do these videos every single week. But if you want to see the heavy hitters for the month, Alex will be putting out a video very shortly going over the month of May, and then you know of some of the big games that are to come. Alex offers a ton of other videos as well, going into different reviews and previews and updates on campaigns as they are actually happening, and he also offers a series where he goes over the value proposition of the different games currently on crowdfunding, going into the history of other games of a similar genre or maybe from that same publisher in the past, and if they held their value and which pledge levels might make sense and which pledge levels might make less sense if you are planning to back it on crowdfunding. You can find a link to his channel in the description below, as well as a few other content creators that I'd recommend if you want to see upcoming retail games or maybe upcoming historical war games. But we don't have too many games launching this week, which is kind of a nice break considering we had about 3 times as many games launching last week. But of the games that we do have launching this week, there are some really interesting ones, and one that I will most definitely be backing, and that one will be my pick of the week. But without further ado, let's get into it. And the first campaign we have launches on May 6th, and this one is called Space Missions. And this one is a competitive game where players are going to be using action cards in order to prepare and complete different mission cards. And there's only going to be 8 mission cards provided in a single game, but you're going to be drawing those from a pool of 20, which means that you're going to have quite a lot of variety from game to game. But each of these missions can have varying difficulty, requirements, and rewards, and players will be racing to complete these because whoever completes a mission first is going to be getting the most victory points for it, and then everyone else who completes it after that is going to be getting a little bit less. The cool thing here is that you can also complete a mission multiple times, but each time that you continue to complete it later, you're going to be getting the lower amount just like everyone else. The other interesting thing with these mission cards is that they do come in a few different categories, and that's going to be moving you up these different tracks depending on the category of missions that you're able to complete. This can also get you additional victory points at the end of the game if you are in the lead, but players can only complete 1 mission card each and every round, but you can complete any mission card that you want. But of course, to attempt a mission, you're going to have to meet the requirements in terms of the ship that you have prepared for that mission, and players will each have 6 different action cards that do have multiple options on them, but players will only be able to play 5 of the 6 cards in order to prepare their ship and do different things like upgrade the different components, add fuel, boosters, or life support, or even astronauts for manned missions, and each of these could be added just to fulfill the minimum requirements to actually attempt the mission. But what's really neat about the way that the missions actually resolve is that each of these missions have a number of technology cards that need to be drawn in order to determine whether that mission is going to be a success or a failure. Each of the numbered rows on a mission card indicate the different phases of that mission, and these could represent launching your ship, detaching different components, landing, or even detaching your escape pod in order to send your astronauts back home. But for each of these, you're going to have to draw a certain number of cards, and the more of these cards that you draw, the more risky that mission is going to be, because you're going to be drawing these cards from the specific decks on your own personal player board, with each of these decks having a certain amount of failures or issues that could arise in that phase of the mission. This could cause injuries or loss of your astronauts, or even complete failures of certain parts of your ship, which could potentially cost you the mission. But if you have the appropriate backup boosters or life support modules or other modules, you could potentially spend those to evade those issues. This creates a little bit of a push your luck aspect where you might want to invest in certain backup modules depending on the mission that you're trying to attempt in order to increase the odds of a successful mission. The neat thing about this is that even when you fail, you do learn more about your deck and where the different cards are, and there are different actions that do allow you to move cards around or even completely remove them from your various decks in order to ensure a higher chance of success in the future. But the game continues like this, and the player with the most victory points at the end wins the game, and if you are interested in this one, you can check it out. I'll have it linked down below. And launch on May 7th, we have a reprint as well as a new expansion for the game Dutch Resistance Orange Shell Overcome, and this is going to be adding the Dare to Strike expansion. I'll get into what exactly this adds in a second here, but first I'll just let you know how the original game plays, because this is a scenario-based co-op game that's focused on the Dutch resistance during World War II. And players are going to be playing as their own unique characters with their own unique board, abilities, as well as action cards. And what's neat about the different characters in this game is that they are actually based on real people back during this time in World War II. This is a game that offers a bunch of different scenarios, and players will be able to choose a scenario that they want to play. And there's going to be different win and loss conditions depending on the scenario, and there's also going to be some special actions that players can perform as well. But something that's really neat about the way the theme is baked into the cooperative aspect of this game is that at the start of each round, all the players are going to be simultaneously drawing 3 action cards from their individual decks, but then each player is also going to be drawing 1 occupier card in secret, which represents the actions that the enemy is going to do at the end of all the players' actions. This is really neat because there's going to be some information that's available to all the players, and then other information that each player is only going to be able to keep to themselves. I think this ties into the theme really well because this is a game where players are trying to sneak around and avoid patrols, and there might be something that you see in the specific area that you're at, but you're not really able to easily communicate that to the other players. So although the players are able to discuss what they think is the best thing that they can do or what they might want the other players to do, each player still has to keep the details of the occupier card that they hold completely to themselves. But in order to actually perform actions in this game, you're going to be spending an amount of action points, and these can be provided on your various cards. But for the most part, your action points are going to be determined by the current morale of the Dutch resistance at that point in the game. Of course, there's actions you can use to manage this to try and increase your morale so that you get more action points in a future round, but there's also going to be a bunch of actions that allow you to move around on the board, pick up resources from one location and try to deliver them to other locations, and there will be different patrols out on the board that will be moving around between rounds that you're going to be trying to avoid. But each of these different locations will also have a safety meter that represents how dangerous or safe they are, and if that gets too low, it can cause raids that can have a variety of negative effects to the player, but players will also have to manage their own individual track as well, which represents their alibi, and this dictates how easy it is for you to get away with certain actions throughout the game, so that's something that you're going to want to keep up. And of course, if that gets too low, you're also going to be facing a bunch of negative effects depending on the actions that you're trying to perform. Players are going to be trying to do all this to complete the specific requirements of the scenario so that they can win the game, but any resources that players have still on them at the end of the round is going to cause some negative effects, reducing morale or raising the danger at different locations. And at the end of each round, you're also going to be drawing a patrol card that will dictate any new units that get added to the board or the way that the different patrols move around out on the board. The new expansion is going to be adding a few new scenarios into the game, as well as new cards for each of the different characters. There's also going to be different modules that you can add into the game in order to make the game more difficult or even a little bit easier, allowing players to get more powerful action tokens or a higher maximum alibi or morale. But then there are cards you can mix in that add more dangerous occupiers to the road. So if you're interested in any of this, definitely feel free to check out the campaign, and I will have it linked in the description down below. Launching on May 7th, we have Ice the 2nd Edition, and this one is a really awesome game where players are going to be playing as different factions with their own special ability, but also players are going to be digging through different layers of ice, collecting the different tiles that they're able to dig through. And what's cool about this is that the first layer of tiles is going to be granting you with one-time use actions that you'll be spending those tiles in order to perform. But then there's other tiles that you're going to be trying to collect in order to create different sets that do also grant you with special abilities if you collect a certain amount of them, but you can also cash these in for victory points in specific moments in the game, so you're gonna have to balance trying to hang on to those for as long as possible in order to gain the benefits of the ability, but you'll also want to cash those in for victory points as much as you can because you do have a limited amount of opportunities to do so. But this is a game that I have played in the past, and I think this one's fantastic, and for that reason, this one is my own personal pick of the week, because I do have a lot of confidence in this one. And I will say that I didn't keep this one in my collection, but it was for a very specific reason. And that reason was that I felt the game just went on a little bit too long. And a big reason for that was because of the structure of the rulebook. The rulebook was fine for learning the game, but once we actually played the game, there was little edge cases and questions that would come up. And because the rulebook was just not structured very well, it took us a lot of time to actually find the rules that we were looking for. But if the rulebook was a little bit better, I would have kept this one for myself, and that is one of the reasons that this one is my own personal pick of the week, because the second edition is actually introducing a brand new revamped rulebook, as well as a more streamlined game. This does come with some simplifications to the game, because the original game actually had 5 layers of ice, whereas this newer version is only going to have 3, but I do think that is a positive thing. And they're also adding in another action that allows you to compensate for the fewer tiles that you're going to be picking up. I've also modified some of the actions offered on the various tiles to make them a little bit less take that than the original version of this game. And for anyone that does have the original version of this game, they will be offering a PDF of some 1.5 rules that do allow you to port over your existing components to the new rule set. But they will also be offering a conversion kit on their campaign as well if you do want to get the official physical changes. I really do like what I'm seeing with this one, and I always love to see publishers taking feedback from their backers and making big improvements to their games, and I wouldn't be too worried that you're now only going to have 3 layers of tiles rather than 5, because I do think less is more when it comes to this game, and I think having that streamlined experience is going to be a much better trade-off, and it does sound like they've incorporated these new changes in a way that you're not really going to be missing much from that original game. But like I said, this is a game that I have played, and I also have covered it in the past, so I'll just go ahead and roll my previous footage for you, but just keep in mind those few changes that I already mentioned. But if you do want to learn more, I will have links to this one in the description below, and I definitely recommend following along to make sure that you get that free gift added to your pledge. And I also just recommend checking this one out. And in this game, players are archaeologists exploring tiles of an ancient civilization for wealth and reputation. This game features a really unique mechanism, as the game board is actually made up of 5 layers of tiles. Players are going to be using their workers to excavate these tiles to earn special abilities. The first layer represents the ice sheet, and the tiles gained here can be played as special actions throughout the game. The second, third, and fourth layers represent the surface, intermediate, and deep artifact levels, which offer game-changing rules to the player that collect these tiles. The last level is where players are going to be digging up different artifacts for reputation points at the end of the game. Players will each have their own colored archaeologists to control, but there will also be these smaller white archaeologists that players can freely claim from each other during their turn. On a player's turn, they get 5 action points to spend. You can use these action points to build camps, or you can use those action points to place archaeologists from the reserve onto your camps, or you can use a point to move your meeple to an adjacent tile, or you can excavate a tile for 3 action points, but this cost is lowered by 1 for each meeple that you have on it. 1 action point may also be saved for use on your following turn. As tiles are excavated, other tiles will collapse and be removed from the game if they're ever only adjacent to one other tile. Tiles are all locked within an outer frame, which makes picking up the tiles quite easy without shifting around other tiles on the board. And there is a small gap between the different tiles, so that picking up that first tile on a given layer is not too difficult. Also launching on May 7th, we have Scrapbots, and this one is a head-to-head card battler where players are going to be starting with their own deck of cards, but then players are going to be buying more cards from the market throughout the game, creating their own individual decks, and then playing those cards into different lanes to try and inflict damage on their opponents. On a player's turn, they're always going to be drawing 4 cards into their hand, and the 2 main cards offered in this game are the bot cards and the upgrade cards. The bot cards are going to have some amount of health and attack power, as well as a cost in order to issue that attack, and also a special ability. The upgrade cards also do offer a special ability, and you're going to be pairing those with your bot cards that you're putting out into the various lanes, but you're also going to gain a bonus for pairing that upgrade with the appropriate type of bot, because each of the bots and upgrades do come in different types, and if you're able to pair that, that is going to make them a little bit more powerful. As I said, issuing attacks does cost you energy, and the way that you're going to be getting that is through the various special abilities, but you can also discard cards from your hand as well as from the board in order to trade those cards in for energy. But after players have performed all the actions that they want to, they can actually discard any remaining cards that they have for money, And then you can use that money to purchase new cards you're going to be adding into your deck. And then you're going to be drawing back up to 4 cards. Whenever you do attack with a card, it's going to be attacking your opponent's card in that same lane if there is one available. And the damage that you accumulate onto that card is going to continue until it exceeds the amount of health that card has. Any excess damage is lost, but if there is no card there when you do issue attack, instead of causing damage, you're going to be adding malfunction cards into your opponent's deck. The game ends once these completely run out, and whoever has the most of them at the end of the game is going to be losing the game, but these do also double as a bit of a catch-up mechanic, because when you go to draw your 4 cards into your hand, if you happen to draw a malfunction card, that's going to allow you to draw 2 more cards into your hand. This means that you'll have a larger hand of cards to choose from if you draw a lot of malfunction cards on that initial draw on your turn. But the game continues like this until all those malfunction cards have been put into each of the player's decks, and then the player that has the most at that point loses the game. And if you are interested in this one, you can check it out. I'll have it linked in the description down below. Also launching on the 7th, we have Lightspeed Arena, and this one looks like a lot of fun, and I will most likely be backing this one because this one is a real-time game, which is a genre that I'm normally not a huge fan of, but I think this one does it really, really well. And on top of that, this is a game that just takes minutes to teach and play, because the way that this game works is that each player is going to be controlling their own fleet of ships, and you're going to be starting the game by putting out a few asteroids out on the board, as well as each of the players' home bases. But then the game just plays over 8 10-second rounds where players are going to be flipping one of their tiles and then placing it out on the board in a position that hopefully scores them the most victory points at the end of the game. Once you place the ship down, you're not able to move it for the rest of the game, and all the victory points for this game are scored at the end of the game depending on the position of your ships and your opponents, and you're going to be scoring those by activating them in their initiative order, because each of the ships are going to have a number on the ship, and that's going to dictate in what order those ships are going to activate, and if they have the same number, they're going to be activating simultaneously. And there are a bunch of different ways to score victory points in this game. You're going to be getting victory points for dealing damage to other ships, dealing the most damage to a ship when it is destroyed, and then also you can shoot at asteroids in order to collect minerals, and if a ship has minerals on it and it survives to the end of the game, you're going to be getting victory points for each of the minerals that that ship has. But then you'll also be getting additional points if your base isn't destroyed at the end of the game, and there's going to be these different sponsors that can vary from game to game that can also introduce different rules and different ways to score victory points that will make that game play a little bit differently from any others. Each of the ships can also have a different amount of damage that they can take before they're destroyed, and they can also have different colored lasers of different power that do deal different amounts of damage. And some of these ships can also have shields that you'll want to position in such a way to reduce the amount of damage that you might take from opponents around you. Of course, the campaign does offer different components and tokens in order to keep track of all of this, but what is really awesome about this specific campaign is that they actually have an app that will do all of this final scoring for you. And I know a lot of us might be scared off by an app, but I really do think this is a really nice addition to this particular game, because it's not required to actually play the game, but it's just a really nice thing to make that final scoring a lot faster, and also pretty fun because it's going to animate every attack that happens between the various ships. And all you have to do is take a picture at the end of the game, and then it's going to play out all the sequence of events in that specific battle, and all the players can watch that play out and see what those final scores amount to without a whole lot of overhead from the players. And I admit I am one to avoid app-driven games, but I wouldn't really put this in that same category, and using an app just to work out that final scoring I don't think qualifies it as an app-driven game. It just seems more like an app-assisted game, and I have absolutely no problem with that. I do have other games in my collection that I have downloaded apps in order to help with that final scoring, and I think this one does it in a really fun way. But if you absolutely don't want any apps touching your table, like I said, they still will be offering the analog components if you do want to do all that manually. This one looks like a lot of fun, and I'm super excited to check this one out, and if you are as well, you can find a link to it in the description down below. Also launching on the 7th, we have Children of Morta, and this one is a cooperative adventure game where players are going to be fighting different monsters and trying to get rid of the evil in their land. Each player is going to be playing as a unique character in this game, each with their own specific stats and special abilities, but each player is also going to have their own player board and their own set of cards that they'll be able to upgrade their actions with throughout the entirety of the the campaign. A really neat aspect of this game is that players will be able to level up their characters individually by gaining different items or gaining experience points that they can spend to improve their actions, but players will also be leveling up as a team because there's shared resources that players can generate and share amongst each other. Then there's also a shared bag building aspect to the game, and players will be able to permanently add and remove tokens from that bag, but then players can also build certain synergies between the individual characters, creating different combos and opportunities that can occur when those two specific characters are interacting. This is a game that plays over a series of scenarios that each have their own win and loss conditions, but they can also introduce other aspects into the game as well. All of this is going to be provided through a booklet that's going to be outlining the scenario, but then also providing you the map that you're going to be playing on. And each of these scenarios can play over multiple chapters and multiple pages as players make their way through that scenario. Each of these will also have their own set of chapter cards that players will be able to discover as they move through that scenario, helping them to discover the story, new opportunities, or even additional threats. Each round there's always going to be one active player, and they're going to be moving the entire party to a new location out on the map. Each of these locations is going to have a amount of tokens associated with that location. Then the active player is always going to be taking one of those tokens and then assigning the rest to any of the other players that they want. These tokens can do things like gain you resources or reveal chapter cards, which, like I said, can progress the story, but also can modify the game in different ways. But most of the time, these are going to be introducing enemies to the player. And anytime that you draw one of these tokens, there's going to be a number of enemy icons on that token. You're going to have to draw that many enemy cards and then put them on the top of your board. You're going to be getting negative effects or potentially even triggering the loss conditions of a scenario if you get too many of these cards above your board. So that's why it's so important to decide which players you're assigning tokens to. But on a player's turn, they're going to be able to draw 5 action tokens from that shared bag, and then you're going to be spending those tokens onto the various locations on your board in order to activate the associated abilities. These can allow you to generate rage, which is a shared resource in the game that you can use or share with your other players in order to boost your attacks. But then there's also actions that allow you to attack or stun your enemies, which do allow you to roll attack dice or even issue guaranteed hits or even prevent a monster from activating for this specific round. There's also actions that allow you to avoid attacks, activate special abilities, and potentially heal yourself or the other opponents if you've taken any damage. But then you can also keep any tokens that you don't want to spend for a future turn, but you do have to draw less the amount of tokens that you decided to keep. So you only really want to be doing this if those are tokens that you think you'll really want in the next turn. Once you've completed all the actions that you want to or that you're able to, all the non-stunned enemy cards on the top of your board are then going to activate, triggering any of the actions on any of those cards. And these could have all sorts of effects like spawning other enemies onto your board or healing enemies, but most of the time they're just going to be dealing damage to the player. All the tokens that you used will go back into that shared bag, but one thing to note with this is that each player also has special fatigue tokens that are marked with their character's icon, and you can actually spend these at any time to re-roll any of your dice or use them as a wild action token. But anytime that you use those also go back into the bag, and when another player or yourself draws it in the future, that token immediately goes back to you and reduces the amount of action tokens that they'll get to use on their turn. So you will have a bit of a cost later for that immediate benefit now. But the game continues like this, with players playing through a variety of different scenarios, facing up against a ton of different bosses and enemies, trying to complete the requirements of those scenarios. And if you're able to do so, you're going to be moving through the campaign and eventually making it to the end and hopefully winning the game. And if you are interested in this one, definitely check it out. I'll have it linked in the description down below. And launching on May 8th, we have Eye of Zamrock Invasion, and this one is a game that incorporates a lot of different elements because this one is a competitive strategy game that also incorporates a bit of cooperation against a common enemy and even a bit of kingdom building. But this one is a campaign that was supposed to launch a few months ago, but it got pushed back until now. So there was a content creator that did already cover this one, and he's really smart, really modest, and really good looking. And I'll just go ahead and roll his previous footage for this now, and make sure to subscribe to him if you haven't already. And this is a fantasy-themed strategy game where players are going to be playing as one of the leaders of 6 different kingdoms. Players will be competing to complete all sorts of different objectives in order to gain medals, which can then be exchanged for all sorts of different things, and the first player that builds the 3rd level of the Crystal Tower is going to be the player that wins the game. The game is played over several rounds, with each round consisting of 3 different phases. There's the action phase, the economy phase, and the kingdom phase. During the action phase, players are going to be taking turns moving their heroes and army units around on the map, fighting different demons and building different buildings, and when you do build buildings, you're going to be spending resources and coins in order to do that, but they're also going to be granting you with some different abilities and benefits. And it's in the economy phase where you really see this, because you're going to be gaining resources from the different sites that you have, and you can also purchase resources from the bank or other players to buy crystals or other items that you might need. And the costs of the crystals do increase as the game goes on, so you really do have to balance buying those sooner, opposed to using those resources that you have in order to upgrade your army. But then there is the final phase of the round, which is the kingdom phase, where players can take one of 3 kingdom phase actions, which is either to quest, build, or collect taxes. Questing allows you to complete different challenges in order to earn money and additional medals, while the building action allows players to choose between building more buildings, building up their crystal towers, recruiting armies, or even reviving knocked out heroes. But if you do choose to collect taxes instead, that's going to be earning you coins, and the amount that you earn is going to depend on the number of territories that you own. And the rounds continue like this, and the first player to complete all 3 levels of their Crystal Tower wins the game. Launching on May 12th, we have Banana Loco, and this one is a competitive party game where players are racing to be the first to collect 4 different colored treasures. And the way this game works is that the main deck's going to be evenly distributed amongst all the players, and then players are going to be taking turns where they can do a few different things on their turn. Of course, you're always drawn up to your hand limit, but with those cards you can do a number of things. The first is to put any amount of them into the center of the table, and anytime that you do this, you always do have to put them face down. And the only cards you can put out there are the treasure cards, the empty chests, and also the trap cards. The other cards you're going to be using for various actions in order to take cards from that central area in order to put into your treasure zone. And this doesn't mean that those cards are treasure, it just means that you've taken them into your own personal supply, and you need to use another action card in order to flip that card right side up and actually see what it is. If it's a trap card, you're going to have to resolve those effects, but if it's a treasure card, you're going to want to try and protect that, because the other players could play actions to steal treasure from you or raid your cards, and there are other cards that you can play in order to protect them. Of course, anytime that there's hidden cards and partial information, there's also the opportunity to bluff. So if you do put trap cards out in the middle of the table, you could potentially take a trap card into your treasure zone intentionally and make the other players think that that might be a treasure card that they might want to steal from you. And then when they do, they have to deal with those consequences. But the game continues like this until a player collects 4 different types of treasure cards, and then that player wins the game. And if you want to check this one out, I will have it linked in the description down below. And that is everything I have for you this week, but don't leave yet, because we still got a few awesome giveaways to announce. And these are the easiest giveaways to enter ever, and every single one of these giveaways is offered worldwide, so anyone can enter these. And the first one is Micro-Midgard, which is a worker movement game where players are going to be trying to complete different objectives throughout the game as Ragnarok is occurring and destroying different action locations, which also causes each round to occur faster and faster as the game goes on, and the player with the most victory points at the end of the game wins the game. And for this week, I'm going to run all these giveaways over on the Discord, which you can find a link to in the description below, and all you got to do is head over to the giveaways channel and click the emoji underneath the giveaway, and these will automatically be drawn at the end of the week. But the next giveaway we have is for Cosmic Chains, which is a competitive game where each player is competing to create the longest chain of satellite dishes, but each of the satellites that you put into play will have a different ability, but then they also come in different types, and you can only connect certain satellite dishes to certain other types of satellite dishes. Of course, you'll want to be taking advantage of those abilities to try and manipulate your different cards in your favor, especially since your opponent does have different ways that they can mess with your cards. You'll probably want to rearrange them so that you are still connecting as many as possible. Players gain a victory point for each of the cards in their longest chain, and then that player wins the game. And just like the previous giveaway, this one will be offered on the Discord in the description down below. But the next giveaway we have is for Party Wanted, which is a party game where players are going to be working together to complete different levels of a dungeon, with each of the levels having 3 different challenges that players need to complete. There's a social challenge as well as an actual challenge that you need to complete to move through that dungeon. But then there is also a drink challenge, which will require you to drink. I don't know about you, but with that one, I am feeling particularly brave. Players will be going through the different levels of the dungeon, then going up against the final boss, and if they're able to defeat that boss, then they win the game. We also have Roller Coaster Park, which is a competitive roll and write game where players are going to be building up their own attractions and then using a die each and every round in order to determine which section of their board they're going to be activating. Then the second die is going to be used to determine the option within that section. The different sections allow you to build different types of rides in different polyomino shapes. You'll have to draw those out on your sheet, but you're also going to be building different paths to connect those together, and then also using actions to try and attract different types of guests, with each of your rides allowing you space for a new guest, but it needs to be a type of guest that is willing to go on that type of ride. Of course, all of these will be gaining you victory points in different ways, and then the player with the most at the end of the game wins the game. Players are going to reveal a character card, and then players are going to be racing to try and locate that character in one of the 3 cards. The catch here is that if you don't see that character on any of the cards that are face up, then it's probably on that face down one, but you absolutely want to be sure before you slap that card. But the first player to guess correctly is going to be gaining that character card as a point, and then once players go through that entire deck, the player with the most character cards wins the game. Like I said, all you got to do to enter in for all these giveaways is head to the Discord in the description below, click on the giveaways channel, and then click the little emoji underneath that giveaway, and this will be automatically drawn at the end of the week. Good luck in the giveaways, but now let's go ahead and draw the winners for last week's giveaways, which was for a pledge for Earth and the Abundance expansion, as well as a pledge for Firesiege. You can go ahead and check these out on Kickstarter now, and I'll have links to them in the description below. But to enter these giveaways, I did ask you to go ahead and leave a comment on Grant's video, which he posted up recently, and I do recommend checking this one out. But I did notice that a lot of you did still end up commenting on my previous video, so it's not a big deal. I can actually draw the comments from multiple videos by using this comment picker here, which is what I do use to draw a winner. And all these extra names down here are bonus entries for my supporters over on Ko-fi, which if you do like this content and you want to help support this channel and make everything a little bit more sustainable for me, I do appreciate it. It does help keep me independent because I don't take any payment or games from publishers in order to offer this coverage. The first giveaway we're going to be drawing for is Earth, so let's go ahead and add that hashtag in, and let's draw those comments and draw the winner. And the winner for Earth is Tavanesh, who is one of the subscribers over on Ko-fi, so congratulations on the win here. I'll reach out to you and let you know that you won yourself a pretty sweet pledge. But now let's go ahead and draw the winner for Firesiege. So let's enter in that filter, grab the comments, and draw the winner. And the winner is Sebastian, who's also from Ko-fi, so congratulations on the win there. But don't forget, we still do have 5 more giveaways just over on the Discord. All you got to do is click that emoji underneath the giveaways, and that's going to get you automatically entered. And the odds are really, really good as well, so be sure to go ahead and enter into that. It's absolutely no cost to you, and I have all notifications turned off on the Discord by default, so you're not going to get spammed with a bunch of notifications just for joining. But if you do want notifications for anything on the Discord, we do have this rules channel where you can go ahead and subscribe to different notifications, and all the different notifications are outlined here, and a lot of them are really useful, including one that will let you know anytime that we do have giveaways. And that's it for this week, and I am filming this one day early just to give myself a little bit more time for the convention this weekend, so hopefully I didn't miss too many games, but if I did, we do normally add those to the Discord afterwards, so that's just another great reason to check that out. That's pretty much all I have to update you on. I haven't had a chance to play too many games this week other than a few small card games. It's just been really busy with summer coming in and trying to get the yard all into shape, but I guess going outside once in a while isn't so bad. But as always, thanks so much for watching, and until next time, keep that shelf cluttered and the table full.
What?